The production of this video was made possible by donors to the Orchestration Online Patreon initiative. Please consider adding your support to the creation of free educational internet resources by visiting our Patreon page linked below. Hey there, this is your orchestration tutor, Thomas Goss, welcoming you to yet another collection of website evaluations for the 2020 Orchestration Challenge. So let's just jump straight into Andrew's score here. And Andrew, I really love what you're doing with this. There are a few basic things to cover. I notice you've got some substitutions marked, and there's some other things, some basic stuff to think about in terms of scoring and phrasing and everything else, okay, and dynamics. But the basic thrust of what you're trying to do here is actually really nice. You know, it's reminds me of a simpler, more straightforward orchestration approach from an entry in one of the last couple of videos that I put together, where you're really just trying to have you're trying to get like some more basic qualities of instruments to combine and everything else, all right, and to relate to each other, rather than having big kind of massive highly textured or highly spiced kinds of approaches, which, both kinds of things are great. It's just, how effective is each on its own merits. Now, I notice there's a lot of optional kind of scoring, and that gives me yet another thing to talk about, right? So let's just assume that it's all possible, okay? And if that is true, then what I think you should do is, if you have your substitution stuff marked here, I think that you should have this in smaller, like mini notes, okay? Just mini notes, so that the optional notes are it's immediately evident to the conductor if they have almost no time to rehearse and they barely remember what they looked at yesterday and they plop it on the stand, right? And so what you would do is any part that is intended to emulate or substitute for another instrument would be mini notes, and you don't have to say if no horns, you would just say horns or horn sub. Right? And then you don't have to say play in parentheses, right? You just have it in regular note size, right? And then once again, mini notes and say sub horns. Okay? So that's the way to handle that. Pardon my throat clearing. So now let's talk about the dynamics here. Now, in your sound set, you've got your oboe mixed a little bit low. I don't know if you can get in and adjust the mix in your plugins, your sound sets but yeah, you really have your oboe very low. Here, as I've mentioned in other evaluations, groups of evaluations, it is really unnecessary to have the accompaniment swell underneath the melody, right? It's the melody that gets the nuances in the piano part, right? Because the chord, as it's being held down by the pianist, cannot like increase and decrease in volume, right? It's just being held, right? So if you're transcribing the effect of the piano chord being held down, then there's really kind of no way to increase unless like maybe to bring out this one note that is alternating, which most pianists wouldn't do, right? So yeah, so there's kind of no need for the like, da, there's kind of no need for that. So bum 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 bum. This is nice. Okay, so you've got slurs over it. Now here, you're getting into separate voices, right? So you've got your first oboe on top, and then your second oboe coming in below. And I mean, here is where slurs would really help to define which voice was playing what, right? So if you had slur, slur, and then second comes in, slur, and then first comes back in, slur, slur, right? That's just visually, I mean, do you really want each one of these? It's really strange. You go da, and then you go da 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 da, and then here you have ba do, right? So I just think you didn't edit this or think it through. Okay, so really, please pay much, much, much more attention to that. Now, in the piano part, Lily has a bunch of crescendos in a row, which is a kind of a romantic like approach, right? It's for piano playing. It doesn't necessarily mean that each following bar is going to be slightly louder than the last one. It means that the internal phrasing of each bar is going to have a kind of a surge to it, and then here we've got more like pulling back. So the way that most people have dealt with this when they have reimagined it is that they have had like one long crescendo from it, either from here or from here, right? So it's just like one big thing. Because like that kind of piano playing, that kind of piano dynamic doesn't really translate very well to orchestra. It leaves the players thinking, well, am I supposed to just sort of surge? Is this kind of that romantic thing? Or am I just supposed to get slightly louder each bar? I mean, what am I supposed to do? So what you need to do as the orchestrator is to clarify that for them, right? To leave no chance of raised hands at rehearsal over that particular issue, right? Because that little bit of education that you'll get of like learning how the players think about it and what they would want you to do is going to cost about $75 to $100, right? All right, just like thinking in terms of like economy, like what can you afford as the person possibly hiring the orchestra, or the person who has, maybe you're not paying for it, maybe somebody else is paying for it, but you just, that time that you lost is precious. Right? What would you rather have? 15 minutes of somebody reading like a 3-minute work and getting it ready for a performance or a reading or one final run through? Would you rather have 15 solid minutes of people really playing through it and understanding what they're supposed to be doing and not raising their hands? Or would you rather have like maybe 9 minutes of them actually playing through it and another, 6 minutes of like people working out what you mean? What did that mean in the context of the playing? So that's one of the things, like just really try to clarify like the difference between the piano style dynamics and the if it doesn't make sense orchestrally, then don't do it, right? This doesn't really make sense orchestrally. These like just one bar after another of crescendo. It's really better to have one long solid crescendo if that's what you mean, right? Okay, I'll stop ranting about it. But yeah, so just, you need more slurs in here to help define the different phrases and little lines and stuff like that. And you need to redefine the dynamics. And otherwise, it's really kind of cool, like what you did here with the orchestration. So now let's move ahead to the development. So, I think you could possibly, maybe these could be also smaller groups of slurs. So you have like an articulation on the downbeat, da da. Instead of da. Where's the pulse? Okay. So here, like, everybody goes back to soft, and you're going bum. I think this should be slurred. Dum. So pianissimo horn, if you really want it to blend with the violas. If you don't, then you'll hear the horn and you'll have a tiny bit of viola behind it if you mark them both piano. Okay, and why is the accompaniment getting the nuances but the melody not? I don't understand that. Right? Dum bum. Okay, and then so here we've got a problem. Andrew, I don't know if you've watched some of the earlier evaluations, so I'm going to... Actually, this has not come up for about a dozen scores, but I'm going to bring it up now. And that is, mezzo staccato should have a single slur over its group, right? And then on the next bar, you should have a new group of slurs, right? Like you should have a new slur. Right? Don't slur across a mezzo staccato. Just make the slur cover the, because it's like you're asking the player to articulate a group of notes the same way. Da, da, da. Right? It's like an almost staccato where the breath almost continues, right? And then you're asking them to play like it doesn't make any sense, right? Because this is a note with a separation, and then you playing here. Right? So how do you slur into that? It just doesn't, it logically doesn't make any sense, right? So just have your mezzo staccato slurs over the notes that are mezzo staccato, and then start afresh with a new articulation on the next bar, okay? And then you can slur like this resolving little gesture right in there, okay? But I mean, other than that, I really think it's cool. You've got I think you may be starting to overuse the timpani, like I mentioned in a score in the last group of evaluations. I think timpani is cool, but like then when you start to overuse it, it's just a bit much, right? Now, why is your double bass getting mezzo forte here, but pianissimo there, but nobody else is getting pianissimo, right? So suddenly we can hear the harp and we can hear the timpani, and we can't hear the double basses anymore, right? So better to have everybody go down to pianissimo to match, right? So that's probably just leaving out the dynamic, that kind of error there. All right. Bum, bum, bum. Right? So, I mean, if we want this kind of smooth, kind of that's the suggestion that Lily makes, right? She wants it to be supple, right? So I think it really should be slurred in some way, whether it's da da da, or da da. I do think that some of this should be slurred. So here you've got like flutes taking the actual melody notes of F sharp on the outside of the chord, and you've got the strings playing underneath, and they're like the only instrument playing the melody in here is the actual cello, kind of taking the bottom of the chord. Okay, so I mean, you'll hear the flutes on top and you'll hear the strings below, but it's just a little bit schizophrenic because I feel that it sounds great on the sound sets, but in practice I think that the flutes will end up sounding a little isolated and shallow, right? With just that much separation between winds and strings, and just with the flute sitting on top of these string chords. Now, right here at the end, that's beautiful, the integrated sound, right? But this F sharp is a bit low to be competing with the horns, right? So like you've got your you got your horns. Now this is concert pitch, by the way, everybody. So you got your horns kind of sitting there like they're playing softly, and what, staccato on a dotted half note tie, right? So I think that's a mistake. Okay, so you've got your horns sitting here, and you've got a D sharp right there, and it is right next to an F sharp on flute. So basically you're not going to hear the second flute at all, right? So this note should be played by clarinet or some other instrument. Okay. Um, right. And there I'll have to stop because yeah, I'm only slated to look at the first 20 bars for the website evaluations. But it's really cool that you went on and scored more. And I mean, I think you did the entire movement. And look, if you're going to put that much work into it, as I've mentioned in other evaluations, just I think you owe it to yourself to have me spend 45 minutes evaluating the whole score. So just consider, like, maybe next time you do this, and I think a lot of people are going to opt to do the entire piece that I'm going to be introducing next year. If that is the case, then I think you really should consider, like, supporting as a Dotted Brev member or whatever, so that I can spend 45 minutes talking about your considerable effort. Okay? So yeah, so look, you know what I'd suggest next time? Don't even worry about the optional stuff. I mean, unless you're really intending this to be played by a chamber orchestra and you've got them in mind and this is all planned for that, don't even bother with the optional jazz, right? But if you do have to do that and you are considering this for that kind of a thing, then just use mini notes. Don't worry about if no horns in play. Just say horns sub, right? And then they will know what to do with the big notes, and then back to horns sub. All right, and that will sort you for that. But otherwise, like, the general scoring of things is pretty strong, and you're keeping it straightforward, and I think that's brilliant. And I wish I could talk about this next section here, but that's all right. I will just bring it to a stop now, and thank you very much, Andrew, for being a subscriber and for being part of the Orchestration Online community. I really appreciate it. So on to the next evaluation. Okay, Ricardo, looking at your score, it's just a really fun, beautiful, straightforward kind of an approach. Now, just a few tips on scoring. Okay, and that is like the layout, right? So over here you've got all your resources: flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, horns, and so on and so forth, harp. All good. Okay, but that should actually also be the first page, right? So, like, generally speaking, the first page of the score should have all the instrumentation on it. And yeah, so I mean, if you had formatted this vertically, excuse me, horizontally, like in landscape format, and just basically everything could cover all the way across, right? As you've seen in some other scores, and it would also be clearer, right? We could see all the instruments being used. So, because, like, that's really what you want to see on the first page, unless it's a score that is being played a lot, like, most editions of The Rite of Spring, for instance, would not show all the instruments being used on the first page, because it would just be like at a huge first page. But in your case, in the case of most concert scores, transcriptions like this, and so on, it really is important to show everybody at the beginning. A couple of other things: horn 1 and horn 2. It should just be horns in the middle, right? It should just say horn in the middle, and then we will know that this is like 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and so on. Now, this would not actually be horn 2 down here, but I'll talk about these things as we go. All right? So, solo only applies, you only pull that word out of your hat when you mean to have the instrument be prominent over the other instruments, right? So here, one solo makes perfect sense. Okay, what doesn't make sense is just saying flute and oboe when you have flutes and oboes, right? So this should say this should say flutes and how many of the flutes, right? So it should say 2 flutes, or flutes 1 and 2, or whatever, right? 2 oboes, 2 flutes, 2 clarinets, obviously 2 bassoons. Okay, so that's really important. I know you don't have to say violins 1 and 2. You just say violin 1 and 2. That's fine. Everybody understands. But you need to tell us how many of each. Now here, this is obviously just part of the harmony, so there is no need to say solo, right? And same thing here. This isn't a solo here played by the clarinet, right? So don't just write in solo wherever you only want one player. Just write the number 1, okay? That's all you need to do. So you're half right here, right? Okay. So, now if you really want that emphasis on there, then you should break the slur, right? So, da, da, right? So you get the nice full tenuto slurring down, right? And then same thing here. I mean, look at how long these slurs are, right? Can somebody, yes, obviously the oboist can breathe all the way through there, but you're missing all of the articulations you could put on the downbeats. You know what I mean? So instead of going da, you could go da ta ta ta, right? Just like that. That is dividing things up in by bar, right? And then here, this is almost meaningless. You're slurring across rests, right? But really, what the flute is going, it's going ta ta ta, right? So yeah, you just have got to just break the slur when you got to rest under a slur. This is just piano style phrasing, right? But phrasing may be well and good for a pianist or a harpist or whatever, but for a flute player, it means breathing, right? The slur mark means how long you're going to breathe before you stop, and then and then start another note with another bit of breath, right? Okay. Now, once again, yes, solo. This isn't a solo. This is the resolution that's part of the whole function of the ending right there. It's not really the melody. The melody's on top here in the first flute, right? And here you've got this kind of lovely bustling going on here in the violins. That's all cool. There are actually ways of, I think this may be finale, possibly Dorico, probably finale. So there may be ways of setting like a sextuplet, this kind of shorthand of fingered tremolo. Okay, now harp, probably you want the roll to go all the way across, right? Because usually just 2 single notes, basically what you're asking right here is for the left hand to roll and then the top 2 notes to go da-ding at the same time, right? Rather than going ba-da-da-da-ding, right? So just next time have the roll mark go all the way across to covering, all notes. Okay, this note probably is too weak to really be heard all that clearly, doubling the oboe the way that it does. But if everybody really watches where they're going dynamically, then it should be fine. The problem is you're not telling us how big to get, crescendo to what, right? So does this go up to mezzo forte? How big do you get? I don't even know how loud the oboe should be, or the oboist doesn't even know how loud they should be here. So I'd say piano is fine. And as I've mentioned many times by now, the accompaniment does not need to surge, right? It's there's nothing about it that is inherently surging in the piano score. And then at the beginning of this crescendo, how loud are the flutes, right? So where do we get to? So here if it's soft harp and pianissimo violins, you can hear in the mock-up you cannot actually hear this at all, right? So if you just work out that balance, then you can use your mock-up to work out whether or not the instruments are balancing in a kind of a crude way, right? But speaking of mock-ups, you should possibly also consider getting a better plug-in for your playback, right? note performer might be worth looking into. Just a little bit more balanced, and it uses less RAM. Okay, now going on to the development. Now we go to an alternate melody instrument, which I think is great. So why not slur this like, down, up, right? Instead of going down, up, right? So you're just really asking for one, and then here, like, you have the second violins using two separate bows, right? Is this divisi or non-divisi here at the end? It'd be really easy to play this non-divisi, right? If you wanted to. And then, and then bum, bum. Why can't this be two separate bows? Da, da. Okay. And, harp plus double bass, that's all cool. And yeah, this little thing, I think you only need a single clarinet there, not A2, because like A2 clarinets will have a very kind of phased sound. And there's absolutely zero need for your linear elements to be mezzo piano and your static elements to be piano. In other words, you don't need to have your melody and counter melody be slightly louder compared to the rest of the texture. Just make everybody piano and then add some nuances to your melody, right? Just go, take these little guys and put them here. Da, da, bring out the melody just naturally rather than having to mark it up dynamically, right? And especially here, like the clarinets will tend to dominate the way that you've got this scored with A2 and mezzo piano. So just mark them piano, mark everybody piano, give the violin some nuances, and you could possibly also add them here to the cello if you wanted to. All right, and then here, like da, and this is the actual melody, da, not the F sharp, right? The F sharp is just a harmony note from above, right? Because, and people have challenged me on this in a couple of things. Well, everybody thinks it's the melody. Everybody thinks the F sharp is the melody except for you, Thomas. So maybe we're right and you're wrong. Well, no, you're wrong because Lili is going dun 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 dun. Right? This is all intended to connect. Like da 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 is not the right way to go. Da da da. Right? See, so things are connecting by step. The phrases are connecting to each other by the step of a harmonic. Of a melodic second. Right. All right, and that leads to here. Bum 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 bum. So. In terms of balance here, like, you're sort of judging that everybody's going to be mezzo forte by the time they get to here, and that's going to add. Don't worry about that, okay? I would just say have this be piano, and just add a tenuto mark to the beginning, right? And then it'll work together. Okay, and then bum 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 bum. Here we've got mezzo staccato, correctly slurred, right? But you need to slur it below as well for the second voices. And why not have your strings play mezzo staccato too? So it's like here you're having to go da da, right, and everybody else is going da. Just match the articulation in both sections, right? And then you have like a single bassoon. This is not a solo, right? It's just a featured line. Okay, and then here you have like the echo. Now, this is going to be extremely soft, like you're trying to bring out the flutes to balance them because you know that the flutes are really soft in their lowest register, right? Now, here you didn't have to worry about it because you had A2 flutes doubling the first oboe, right? And so that kind of would work, even though this F sharp would not be all that strong compared to the F sharps being played by the oboes, right? Which is going to be kind of a cold trumpet-like sound, but whatever, okay? But here, like, look, what's wrong with just having this be two clarinets? Like, I mean, why and here you're pushing it all the way down to D sharp and C sharp, and you're expecting this all to balance and be, this to actually contribute anything at all to the cellos, right? It's not going to be, what is it? This is not going to work out the way you think, a line from a recent movie. So really, it's okay. Just have two clarinets on that, which, by the way, this isn't a solo, right? So you don't need to have A2 flutes. It's not necessarily going to balance all that well, right? I mean, it's close to being good, but I just don't feel that it's, I feel it doesn't really do as much as you think it's going to do. Now, here we have oboes on top, horns underneath that, and then trombones underneath that, and then bass trombone below. I feel for a much more cohesive sound, you could have had this being played just by a standard trombone, these elements of the chords being played by your other horns. Now here you have second horn. Okay, actually second horn is this, would either be this fellow here, or would be this note here if you were to combine all of these together. But let's just say that we're going to leave your horn scoring alone, okay? All right, fine. So we're not going to change anything about your horn scoring. This would be actually the third player, right? Because the order in the score is to have the first and second, and third and fourth, right? And the this right in here should actually be played by the second, right? It's all perfectly fine for this to be first and second playing together. And then I would give this A right here to the third, and then have the second play this, right? So this F natural would be up here in this staff, and this A natural, written A natural, would be down here played by the third, right? And then from there on, this little line right in here would be played by the third, and this down here would be played by the second. And that's a much more organic order for these four-part harmonies for that scoring. You do not need to go, I see what you're saying, to use this as the first trumpet, okay? Or excuse me, first trombone. That's just much more secure. And then maybe you don't need bass trombone here. Maybe you just need a tuba player. What if you just have trombones, and then that low note would be played by a nice round, solid sound there, rather than the kind of more aggressive, more chesty, more front of the mouth kind of playing. You'd have like a more encompassing, almost organ-like bass with your tuba, right? Played softly. And projecting, I feel, a whole lot better, and contributing to the overtones above it in a way that works better with your horns, right? So anyhow, so those are just my thoughts on your score there, Ricardo. And it's obviously this is like this is part of an effort that has to do with you being a developing orchestrator, and you're starting to get your chops together and think about these things. And I mean, I can see all the context in here of your training and everything else with orchestration. I'm correcting you on a lot of little basic things, but I know that you've got more information than just that, than just being a complete beginner. So I applaud you on that. I'm really glad to get this entry from you, and thanks so much for being a subscriber to the website, and for being part of the community. And I would really love to see your entry for next year's orchestration challenge. Thank you so much. Now, on to our next score. Okay, Richard, so I really think this is some excellent work. Now, as I've been pointing out throughout this series of evaluations, there are easier ways to to score glissandos so that they will sound better in mock-ups. Okay, and that way is to go to Sibelius.com and get the harp glissando plugin, right? So you basically click on this, you set the values for the notes that are going to be glissandoed. And then the playback function, or actually what will happen is that little MIDI messages will be embedded into the score invisibly, and all you need to do is just draw a glissando line from here to there and from there to there, right? And then you get your multiple glissandos any way you like. Now, here you have a bit of redundancy, right? Just completely unnecessary. If you're going to supply this this diagram, then you don't need this, right? This is exactly the same as that. So there's absolutely zero, and in fact, this right in here, this text is like a triple redundancy, right? So all that most harpists these days need is they just need to see this setting, right? So you could actually, you're being really careful about it too. So if you're going to be this careful about it, then I would say, right here you should just mark the setting of the harp pedals, which I guess just be, all of the pedals up for your 7 flats, enharmonic equivalent to 5 sharps, which I've actually done in my own harp concerto. There is absolutely zero problem with it, okay? And just, mark the glissando line from the different notes that they're going to be crossing, okay? And just make sure that you got your pedal setting right there. And you can get the playback. You do not need this harp playback bar or staves. You don't need them if you just have that plugin, right? It'll just supply the glissandos that you need. Okay, so now let's talk about the scoring, which is excellent, just really nice. Using clarinet at the beginning, just right in the, right at the bottom of its clarino register. There's actually like one note of throat tone right in here, but still, it's just superb. And it's great to hear like a change from most choices of using flute to state the melody at the beginning, right? And that also provides a contrast with like strings plus oboe doubling, right? Okay, so the only thing that I would point out is, just as in other evaluations that I've observed, it's not really necessary for the accompaniment to swell at the beginning, right? That's not what the left hand is doing in the piano part, right? So, it's enough for the clarinet just to be expressive, da, da, or da. And then we have the echoing oboe, da, ba, 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 ba. Okay, yeah, so here we got like smaller groups of slurs, and I just feel they're a little arbitrary, you know what I mean? It's just like, da 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 ba bum da. I don't know. I just feel the grouping on it doesn't really have as much, rhythmic impetus, if you know what I mean. I think it would be easier to like slur across the bar line, though I've recommended against that, or to even slur bar by bar, or to slur down, slur the first 2 beats and then, and then another one. I don't know. So I just think that you could have had your slurring a little bit differently, and it just feels a little, like it kind of doesn't really have any rhythmic emphasis to it, the way that it's slurred. I do like this stuff right in here with the clarinets. I think that's really cool. And I like the way that they're, we've got this bum bum happening in the middle strings right in here. That's just really lovely. Now here, there's no need for the violas to be playing divisi octaves. Octaves are, this is all pretty easy to do. There's, you kind of don't need to go divisi unless you want to match the divisi of the other parts so that the viola is a little weaker, but that's never a concern, right? So yeah, don't worry about that. I would just, just say non-divisi there on those octaves. I like this. I like the involvement of like the harmonic involvement with a little bit of melodic motion in the string parts. I think that that's really cool. Okay, so really, I just feel really good about the opening, the way that it's scored here. Okay, and then just a little bit of triangle there. Yeah, now here with the timpani, you know, just mark a quarter note. You know what I mean? Because the sound of the timpani is, like any sustain that you had here will just be absorbed into the cellos, right? So it's kind of pointless to mark the timpani being, I mean, you could say pianissimo sostenuto, right? And you could just go pianissimo, piano, mezzo forte, right? Instead of having if you just want to be really precise about it. Yeah, I just feel that it's unnecessary to have these long, in general, to have really long durations on timpani unless there is something about the duration that actually catches the ear of the listener, right? Or that actually adds to some sort of textural or rhythmic effect. And I don't feel that that is the case here, right? Because in every case, it's doubled by the cellos, which are going to absorb any kind of sustain that the timpani would have. And, the timpanist's impulse is to damp the sound very quickly in their timpani because they feel that that gives the note a really beautiful shape, right? So it's better to just allow the timpanist to give their note a shape. Oh boy, that is such a great tip. Like, I've thought of everything I could possibly say with timpani, but, not remembering the whole question of articulation. All right, so that one goes in the next book. Okay, so, yeah, so piano espressivo, bum, bum. Espressivo could be and should be expressed or notated with nuances, right? So, crescendo, diminuendo, right? You could have a little, like even just a couple of hairpins here, like crescendo and diminuendo, or crescendo, diminuendo there. And you should definitely have some in your melody too, right? Now here, of course, your first oboe is just adding to the texture of the violin, so you could actually have two oboes here, and that, any kind of hardness to the sound would just kind of help to reinforce the violins. Of course, like the best, like for a very direct sound from a violin, a melody right in here, the best thing is two clarinets, right? Because they give that real beautiful edge to the sound, and then here they can split off, right? And here I love the way that you kind of you do emphasize like that F sharp, but you still add a lot of weight to the actual melody. Da 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 da, bum bum bum. Okay. Yeah. So, and then the little light touches of horn, very nicely balanced, right? If I may say so, it's really nice. You just need some nuances in the melody in the beginning. All right, I feel, and in your counter melodies. All right, now we get to here, and you do something really clever, which might not work. All right, and that is like you're having the horn play kind of high on mezzo piano, right? So that it's kind of a mezzo forte wind instrument, right? In the context of these winds playing together, oboes, clarinets, bassoons. And it's doubling the first oboe, and in the mock-up, it ends up sounding kind of like horns playing, right? So my take on this is if you're gonna have a horn-like sound there, just use horns, right? Just use four horns instead of two. then I think you get what you need there. Or use horns, use horns plus bassoons, and then you get like that beautiful combined delicate sound, right? And clarinets as part of it as well, right? But I think that like basically the oboe is completely wasted here. The first oboe is just it's nobody's going to hear it, even with mezzo piano horn, because the higher you get with the horn, especially like F sharp, that is a note that kind of has kind of a bark to it, even when it's controlled and soft, right? The only missed opportunity that I see here is that like possibly like tenuto staccato or mezzo staccato or some other articulation style could have been used here rather than just straight notes. I mean, it does work, but it's less special than it could have been. And I really love how the echo is higher rather than lower, right? You got your harp, you got your flutes in a good register this time. But once again, I feel the articulation style here could be more than just pizzicato harp plus plain old plain Jane articulated notes. But I love this little this single note here on horn, right? And now bum 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 bum, and you've really controlled just really tried to keep the brass from dominating everything, right? That's really nicely done. And then you have like the horns sort of supporting from the inside, right? So the your trumpet is playing the melody in conjunction with the first violin divisi, and then oboes. And I've recommended this several times now when there's these big kind of mass textures, that it's almost better just to have the strings playing octaves, and then the winds and brass can supply the harmony, and it sounds like the strings are playing harmony already. And it's just a way of simplifying things, of having more force on each note by all of the section rather than divisi, and just really having a clear sound and clear things for the strings to do, rather than like splitting them up and lessening their impact, right? And once again, that's like one of the oldest orchestration tricks in the book. But bum bum bum, I actually like that, right? And you could have done something. You could have had the same thing happening. Like I noticed that you do this for the trumpet, but like why not for the other instruments, right? And then here there's no slurring at all on the piccolo. Maybe that's just a copy paste error. Okay, so, or actually that's second flute. Excuse me. So that's, it needs a little bit more work there, and then this lovely resolution at the end. And then you went on and you scored more, and So yeah, I mean, this shows so much care, Richard. This is such an excellent entry, and judging by the quality of the orchestration going on, I really felt that this kind of deserved to have a full evaluation. So please consider, if you're going to do these orchestration challenges and you're going to put this much work into something, then it just really might be worth your while to support on Patreon and have me evaluate the whole thing for you, right? And give you give this this entry the kind of thought and feedback that it deserves. All right. So more I will not say, except just to thank you so much for your participation in this challenge. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being a subscriber on the Orchestration Online website, which has answers to many of the questions brought up here in these evaluations. All right, so now on to our next entry. Our next score here is from the pseudonymously named JNLD, and it's this is a nice little score. Okay, it treats the opening of the piano score, similar to like the opening of a longer piece, right? So the the orchestration is a little bit simpler in character, and it's it's fairly basic scoring, and it doesn't really reach for for monumental heights of artistry and craft and everything else. Okay, so that said, there is still a lot we can do with this, and a lot that I can give you some feedback on. Now, starting off here, I really appreciate, by the way, that this is all in transposed scoring. It really helps me reading the English horn and clarinet parts. Okay, just some basic notes about layout here. This brace should cover the bassoons, right, so that it's all together. And looking at the opening, you're saying prestissimo, right? So I don't think that that's the right tempo. Okay, yeah, it's quite fast, but not necessarily. So what would that be? That would be kind of like like I would say it would be like allegro assai, right? Not necessarily prestissimo, right? So prestissimo is as fast as you can play without messing up, and I don't think that we're quite there yet. So I think that it's more like a brisk, vivace is probably if you're going to use Italian terms, or vif is another way you could notate it. So as I've mentioned, maybe this is turning into my new mantra. Not necessary for the accompaniment to swell here at the beginning. And I see you've sort of interpreted the kind of swelling dynamics going on over and over again. And here we end up with kind of like not necessarily the most balanced idea here, because if we're in the middle of a swell here and then we're starting in here piano, this is actually softer than the accompaniment, right? Maybe it would be better for things to start going crescendo to a louder place right in here, right? And of course, in the original score, this section right in here is intended to like accelerate and then retard, right? So we're kind of missing that nuance from the score. I mean, it's just like pacing in if you were to be reading something aloud, right? Or punctuation if you're reading something and without reading it aloud. And here you're telling the clarinet just to basically play everything in one breath, right? So maybe it would be better to have shorter slurs, right? Dum ba bum 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 bum. Now here, like you're keeping everything really soft, like having these little swells, right? And then you're ending with this high G sharp, okay? And I'm telling you, I'm just saying no way, right? Like, I mean, there are some clarinetists that can play high G sharp softly, but it still is a very piercing sound. It's sort of like high notes on piccolo, right? It will still have this kind of a sound that sort of whistles or shrieks, or it can be controlled down so that it doesn't have the kind of force and penetration, but the quality of the sound is still very, very, very bright. Okay, so this may not be the best sound to end this phrase on, right? So you have to really think of these phrases. Like one of the things that's most exciting about Lilly's original piano score is the phrasing of each episode, of each section, right? It has like the phrasing works like a really beautifully written sentence or paragraph, right? And it has its own logic, and it's and I just feel that it's just a little too like there just really isn't enough shape to it, right? In terms of like the dynamics being worked out, so that there is a peak that so that there's a retard that kind of sort of brings the music to an elegant close, and then the next episode starts, right? So but other issues aside, English horn is placed a bit high, but it's still still nice and easy to control. Then it goes all the way up to A sharp, still cool. The violins need to have slurring that that works good with bowing, like maybe down, up, down, up, down, up, right? That would be a good way to add slurs, but don't add bowing marks. Okay, but I mean, generally speaking, like the harmonization and everything else in here works nice, and it's good that you don't have the flutes too high. But I would actually switch the flute part for the oboe part right here, right? It's just better to have the flutes over the oboes in an area where they can contribute more to the texture in an intelligent way, right? It's like better to have the flutes doubling the second violins here, or maybe even at this point, from this G natural, the flute could take over, and then the clarinet could take a lower subsidiary part, doubling the strings, right? And then you don't push the clarinet so high into a place where it can't play softly. Now, going on to the to the development of the melody. Bum, 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 ba, da, da, dum. This is really great. You're actually sticking with the actual melody, but you need to break the slur, right? Da, da. So there's some push on that downbeat, right? And here you got this da, da. Okay, now staccato on a tie. I'm not sure if this is a tie or a slur. Staccato on a dotted half note. Think about what you're doing here, right? So that doesn't make any sense. Okay, and just have, like, I would just say just have shorter slurs. Da, da, so you get an emphasis on the downbeat. Da, da. Now here, I think you intended to sort of have staccato here as your basic articulation style, but here you are slurring across to an accent. So you probably didn't intend to even include this slur, but maybe you left it in because it was in the piano part. But it doesn't make any sense on a wind instrument, right? Because the whole essence of staccato, of mezzo staccato, is like a diaphragmatic staccato, right? Rather than going doink 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 with the tongue, you're going huh huh huh, and then you're having the player hit an accent with their diaphragm, huh, right? Rather than look at what the English horn is going. Listen to what the English horn is doing. Dun 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 dun, or dun 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 dun. Right. So so just really think about what those things mean, right? When you slur across a staccato, it isn't just like, oh hey, it's a staccato that's smooth. No, it really has a specific articulation style. Okay, and then. And this is really a long slur, right? I mean, and you're basically saying here that you don't want this to be articulated in the middle. You just want it's like there's no ta. There's just no. There's and here, like, everybody else is just like playing single notes. Down, up, down, right? So maybe there is not enough slurring in your wind parts and too much slurring, except for, too much slurring in your clarinet part. Okay, so that's just some thoughts about articulation, slurs, and so on. But let's look at the actual orchestration of this second half. Okay, so we've got there bum. I feel this should also be bowed, right? And we've got the clarinet again stating the opening, right? So it's just kind of much of a muchness, as they say in the Commonwealth, right? It's just it's like a lot of the same thing, right? Couldn't this be a different wind instrument, right? I actually like clarinet. I mean, I like clarinet starting off, and I like clarinet in this second, episode. But I don't know if I like them like both of them, right? Just, I'd say like choose one or the other. Maybe have this be like oboe trading off with flute, right? And then here have clarinet come in as a different quality, or maybe have it be strings instead, or strings plus clarinet or something. But don't just do the same thing again, right? And also, like, what's the dynamic here? Right? How loud is everything supposed to be? Yeah. And it's strange, like, I think you've got like some wrong notes here. I think maybe you're thinking that this is B in treble clef, right? This is correct, B, right? But this is, you're writing D sharp here, right? So there's some, definitely some proofreading that needed to be done. Like here you got it right, F sharp down to B, right? But here you're going A sharp to D sharp, right? So I think you had sort of intended, you had intended for this to be like, maybe you were just thinking of treble clef, and I don't know what application you're using here. Okay, but like if you were to sort of fix some of those things, then the orchestration would pretty much work here. Okay, it's kind of heavy to have the English horn is going to be right underneath the clarinets right in here. I feel that it should be doubled by second violin just to have it blend in better. All right, and then here you have the opposite, like this A here, this A sharp on flute is just not going to be heard as much. It should be reversed, right? The oboe should be playing the A sharp, the flute should be playing the F sharp. All right, and then you've got your little bump, 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 bum. Here we've got the English horn and oboe doubling each other. And then clarinet sort of kind of being its own solo instrument, and then bassoon underneath. And then we have some of these elements doubled. Yeah, by... But there's like no doubling with the clarinet. So like I think that the clarinet should be doubled by the first violin, right? And then this should go to the second violin. Okay, and then you sort of have this echo. It's pretty much exactly as done before. So, yeah, I mean, an echo is a kind of call and response. But what's nice with call and response is to have like a different texture or a different, I mean, you could have done like winds echoed by strings, or responded to by strings, or maybe like in the first one could be an octave higher than the second one. There are a bunch of different ways of doing this. You could have different articulation styles. You could have like a nice staccato on the first one, or you could have like mezzo staccato on the first one, and then just like a nice like little staccato or staccatissimo on the second one. There's a bunch of ways of contrasting this, which I think would make your score stronger, right? And then right here at the end, very sonorous, right? It just really kind of digging in the dirt kind of sound. But, at least in this case, the strings do play a strong role. I feel here is a place where, the first bar, at least up to the B, could have been doubled by flute, right? And even the F sharp, right? But then right here at the end, this is kind of thrown away, this D sharp and C sharp. I just don't feel it really contributes a lot with the way everything else is scored. So once again, you've got the oboe over the flute, right? And then the English horn is doubling the flute anyway, so you kind of don't even need the flute there. It's, the English horn is strong enough just to stand on its own there. So I would say just cut the flute and have the flute double the first violins in these two bars, right? And then just have everything else kind of go on without the flute. And maybe not, don't just go for the lowest possible notes for your violins. There are elements of the harmony and resolution that need to be doubled by the violins, and the other string instruments could be doubling the middle parts better. So anyway, so that's my thoughts about your score. It's a shame we don't have a mock-up, but it's really completely not necessary. I could do this entire thing without playing any mock-ups. I look at the score, I see it, and I hear it, and I'm happy with that what I'm seeing and hearing is is better than the mock-up, right? That's my own internally generated mock-up. So I would say like JNLD. Yeah, I'm really glad that you entered the score into the challenge, and I want to see your efforts on the next challenge, right? I want to see what you're going to come up with that. But I just want to say, think some more about score preparation, about finalizing certain things, about about changing the dynamics so that they more accurately reflect what goes on in an orchestra. Having shorter slurs that fit the instruments better instead of just transporting them over from pianos, from piano scoring, and especially just not scoring flute solo, right, without any kind of support. Not thinking of it as being this really big, strong instrument like a clarinet down there. And also thinking of phrases as being musical sentences and paragraphs that have their own internal stuff that works in and out and has, they can slow down and accelerate and have all these other things. Don't leave out those elements next time, all right? Okay, so those are my thoughts on this score. Thank you so much for being a subscriber. And now on to our next one. Hey there, Roger. Really enjoyed this score, and I think it's interesting that you've got the piano embedded into the text, or excuse me, into the score still. Now, just to remind everybody that this is something you can just eliminate, and I think I put that in the guidelines, and it just gives me more vertical space. I can make the staves bigger. And then easier to read in this kind of format, this landscape format. Okay, so let's talk about a few things. You are writing out your everything as like plural, but like we need to know like how many trumpets, how many clarinets, right? It's not enough to just say clarinets in B flat. You have to say like 2 clarinets in B flat, right? 2 flutes, or I guess it's just 1 flute here, right? So in that case, it would be flauto, right? So, yeah, and then, yeah, how many oboes, right? And then at the entrances, you have to tell us who is playing what, right? So like, which oboe is this? If it's the first oboe, you should write 1, and like oboe solo is probably better, or it's like, sorry, 1 period solo, right? And then here at the end, like, which oboe player is playing this? I need to know. And yeah, so trombone, we have 2 trombones here, right, and a bass trombone. So this should, you should tell us whether you want this to be first trombone, second trombone, both trombones, right? A tu, a due. All right. Now, here at the beginning, you have wildly protuberant dynamics for your solos, right? So you just really, you've got this forte oboe, and this is what I would call dynamic mixing, right? So you're basically just using the dynamics to turn things up and down, right? Rather than having like an overall approach within which things organically find their level of dynamic together, right? So just looking at it, I mean, I like this little, I like these little pizzicato things happening in the violins or the strings. That's really nice. Okay, and then here you've got a really soft clarinet part. Now, with this, you could have marked the oboe piano espressivo and then had crescendo and diminuendo, right? And then you would get just the same exact effect, right? Is this, look at the piano, what it's doing here, right? So you do not need to be loud with your oboe. It's going to balance fine. And then the same thing here. This could also be piano espressivo. These other elements are so soft that they don't really interfere with the clarinet being its own instrument. Now, notice this. We have the element of harmony here, this E, and then here on this G sharp, it starts the new phrase. Now, if you were starting the first clarinet's phrase as actually playing the harmony and then going to the melody, you were changing the context of what the melody is here, right? Now, do you really want this da da, right? See, now we've got no downbeat, no articulation on the downbeat. What about da da, or da, or da da da, right? So there's a bunch of different ways of doing this. Now here, same thing, there's no slur, so I don't know what to think, right? And here you've got this slurred, but this isn't, right? So you have to think about these things more. Here we've got some portato on that, that's all right? Right, portato on the string parts. So don't say nat, all right? Pizzicato is canceled by arco. All right, don't say nat. And see here, this is so obviously a copy and paste error, right? Nat naturale, right? That should be used to cancel things like sul tasto, sul ponticello, sul G, right? But pizzicato, arco, go to arco, not natural. Okay, now if that is the case, like if this is intended to be portato, then it should only last this far on the slur, right? You should combine, because like you're saying, these are diaphragmatic, these are bowed articulations that are joined together, right? And then normal note, that doesn't really make any sense because it ends up being separated again, right? So you just end the slur with the grouping, right? Rather than having the slur continue on. Okay, now here we've got the buzz roll being used instead of the tremolo, okay? Don't do that. Okay, let's look at this. I'm going to get my keypad out here. Okay, so the proper beaming for this is not the buzz roll, it is this, right? So that is what you need here. And especially on strings, do not give the strings a buzz roll tremolo marking, okay? This is what you need. Right? That's let me wait before I comment on this further. I just want to cover this a little bit more, right? So you wouldn't be slurring into a tremolo, right? Like tremolos you might tie tremolos to sort of group them together, but you wouldn't slur into a tremolo, right? Especially not with an accent, right? If you slur across here, the accent is lost in the bowing, right? So you want to start with an accented tremolo like so that requires the actual bow to hit it hard, right? So why are you slurring across when you want to hit this with a hard bow, right? Okay, and then this note right here, you're going forte crescendo, and so you're going to end up with a big whistling note here on your piccolo, sort of medium loud clarinet, and yeah, I mean, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to have a big build into this downbeat here, and then you start with this beautiful, exciting strings and the percussion working together, okay? And that's fine, and these big sweeps on your harp. I'm wondering if there's some way to do the harp as just glissandos with inharmonic notes in them, rather than as, kind of as these runs. But I mean, these runs will work fine, but I mean, after a while, when they reverse direction, it's better to have two harps, right, than to just have one harp. And this is completely unnecessary. This this single note here is the same as this note. There's no way for these two notes to play at the same time, and the sustain of this note is completely lost in the action of all of the other notes playing, right? So this doesn't make any sense, this long sustained note. All right, so now let's talk about buzz rolls. So a buzz roll is when the stick, the drumstick, drops onto the drum head, onto the surface, and it bounces slightly, right? And then when you do a buzz roll, you are allowing those bounces to interact and work together. And it's definitely a different kind of a sound. But in terms of like an extended long buzz roll that ends up like a big crescendo, and also in the context of you misusing the buzz roll tremolo marking, the buzz roll marking instead of a tremolo, I think what you really mean here is just this, okay? It's just a regular standard tremolo. So do not use the buzz roll sign when you mean tremolo, okay? The buzz roll should really be specifically used when you really mean a buzz roll, okay? And that has a really specific use and sound and should not be confused with just standard rolls and tremolos. Okay, so other than all of that, and other than the fact that the dynamics here are very strange, then it's actually fairly well, it's fairly nicely orchestrated. Yeah, I mean, there are just so many different levels of dynamic here, like crescendo, and then suddenly you're loud here, and certain things are piano and mezzo forte and so on. All right, so I want you to rethink all the dynamics here so that the winds and the strings work together with the same basic dynamics, and everybody is pushing towards a big climax here, forte, fortissimo, whatever. So they're all working together, they're all playing the same dynamic in all parts, except the, here, your horns are playing softer, okay? All right. Okay, and now let's move on to the second episode, the development. So here I don't know why we need to have a nice long slur. Why not da da down up, right? Instead of just one long slur. And here you have no slur at all, right? So dun 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 dun, right? So it's just a little strange, and we're not, we don't have this clearly marked out, da da dum. Where did that voice go? Right? We really do need this just nice and clear as its own thing, right? But it's nice to. I really like the whole idea of very florid, very fluttering, harp, just, and then you don't need this. Yeah, this is very strange. How is this going to work exactly? How are the strings going to know that they should hold longer in one case and not? You're intending the harpist to stop the sound here, but let this continue on. Just have them all be the same note duration. Okay, but I like the idea of strings plus percussion plus harp. It's really, really nice. Very very cinematic. So bum, and then here we go, bum. We don't have the. Okay, so this was incorrectly transcribed. All right, so see this A sharp here. This should be a C sharp, right? So, and this is the actual melody, right? Da dum. This F sharp is just part of the chord, right? So it's just harmony, because we're going da dum bum, right? So this melodic arc here is leading to the B. It's not going da 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 da. It's da da. So we're missing that bum 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 bum. So you have just a huge focus on that. And once again, I'm not really hearing bum bum. I'm just sort of hearing bum. We don't have the bum bum bum. Um, I see how you're going, but it's just not the same. It doesn't really have the same emphasis, right? So we have a lot of force: oboe, clarinet, like in combination with the violins, but there's no violin doubling above, right? So this flute and piccolo part are they're not really they don't like have any string support. It would be so easy just to jump up an octave with your strings, then you have a very beautiful cohesive sound, right? Rather than the risk of this higher flute and piccolo being absorbed by the sound of the strings, right? Okay, and now we're going to bum 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 bum, and this is really lovely and simple. Okay, but yeah, you have a big strong triangle note. Just forte is fine, and then I would say also forte on celesta, and then here for pizzicato, I would say like the pizzicato could be like maybe mezzo forte. Okay, so bum 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 bum, and then here we have the muted brass, and here I would just leave out the celesta, right? Because it's going to the overtones of the trumpets and trombone are going to absorb the sound of the celesta. So the celesta is sort of secondary, right? And this, if you really want this, you should write a trill, right? Not this. I don't know what this is supposed to be, right? So bum 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 bum. And now I would here we're going bum bum. Don't lead into it. Don't go ba ba bum bum. You know what I mean? Just start, right? Don't lead into this figure. It's meant to just start. It is its own thing. There is no element here that leads to this melodically, right? And I think you want that both ways, right? You just want to push into it. But you don't need to do that. Okay? I think stating this as a brass chorale is beautiful, right? But what if you had your muted trumpets over here and then you answered it with celesta afterwards, and then you had the contrast of going to this nice strong brass chorale here at the end. Bum 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 bum. This is really beautiful. Oboes and clarinets working together, and then really really soft brass, right? So that works great. So look, I think you have a lot of energy in your scoring, and you've got a lot of talent as an orchestrator. Okay, so just just get a few more bits of information about balance, about cohesion, cohesive textures that work together, phrases that work all together. The strength of the scoring is in how the overall dynamic is one idea, and then you score to the dynamic rather than scoring the melody and then forcing everybody into different roles dynamically, right? Yeah. So that's my overall advice on the score. I think it's just really well done, but there needs to be a lot of tweaking and a lot of fixing, and don't use buzz rolls when you mean tremolo, okay? All right, so thank you so much, Roger. Thank you for being a subscriber to the website, and I would love to see your I would really, really love to see your approach to the next challenge. Okay, so our last score for this group of evaluations is from Paco. And yeah, I just really enjoy this a lot. I mean, I love the fact that you've got Sarrusophone. That's a definite nod to Lili's era. And there's some really fun stuff in here. Your major problem is with balance, okay? So, did you notice how in the mock up the flute just disappeared as soon as you brought the horns in? They just poof, they were gone, right? And you couldn't hear this harp harmonic. Here you're doing the Ravel trick of the harmonic plus the struck note and playing them together almost like it's a piano note. Okay, so that's great. That's a great idea. But you cannot hear it because of these horns. Now these horns, if you are going to use them, should be marked pianissimo. Okay? Even piano pianissimo, right? Triple P would be better, right? And did you notice like when they come back on the same exact chord, it's just sort of like, yeah, I heard that before. Sure, yeah, that's fine. It just really does. There's nothing about it. It just feels like the same thing again, right? It's just, yeah, It doesn't matter that it's stopped or not. Actually, this X did not activate the stopped sound in the playback. And I know there's a way of setting that, but let's not worry about that right now. Now here, you don't need to say ouvert. What you need is, very simply, let me get my keypad here. Very simply, what you need is just this, right? Not that. Right? And then the players know, I'm going to play this open now. I'll be fine. So this is actually a slightly confusing the way that it's scored because this is second voice. So technically this should also have like an X below, right? And then here, every single note that is going to be stopped needs to have a plus on it. Okay, so that's just a little bit of tidying up in the horn part. But yeah, like the way that you're using the horn is great, but it seems like a bit much here, like just reusing it. What if the strings were playing this harmony right in here? The middle strings, the second violins and violas were playing that same harmony, right? And then bring the brass in here all together. Okay, so dynamically, everything is fine. So, it really seemed like people are saying, well, Thomas is crazy. Like he's telling people to have the melodic instrument not marked up dynamic degree. But, this is actually the way to do it. This is exactly right. So first flute, solo, okay. And then here, these parts don't need a crescendo. Just get rid of the crescendo, okay? And diminuendo. Delete that, it's not needed. And then this should be marked piano, not mezzo piano, okay? Like you're thinking, like there's this crescendo here and then things diminuendo, so this should start off mezzo piano like what it would be in the middle here, and then forget about that. Get rid of all the hairpins, get rid of them here, just have this play softly, because you're interfering with the function of the melody here, right? Bum bum, and you want this motion in here. You're asking for motion in here, but it's too distracting. So have it be soft, have this be soft all the way through, right? And then same thing here. And then pick up on your crescendo right in here. And then that will work really, really nicely. And keep your horns very soft. This delicate kind of scoring, I would say just make the horn like triple P, right? And then here you can crescendo. Now crescendo to what though? How big are you going to get? Here it says mezzo forte. Doesn't anybody else deserve any guidance? Don't your oboists and flute players and string players need to know that it's mezzo forte as well? And if that is the case and you are going to go up to a mezzo forte, then your brass cannot go up to mezzo forte, neither can your timpani, because they will just drown out everything else. You won't be able to hear anything, right? So it would be better for you to go up to forte, if this is to be mezzo forte, or to go up to mezzo forte and not be any louder than mezzo piano in your brass. and then this will work fine. However, be aware that this high F sharp and E sharp are going to ring out, right? They're going to have a tendency to want to go very, very bright. So maybe like something that you could do in here is like triple P crescendo to piano, right? To really try to control that. And then back down to pianissimo, and then this could go up to mezzo forte. And then things would just organically balance, and you could actually hear the harp and celesta there. The way that you got this with the mezzo forte roll, even going down to piano here, and mezzo forte diminuendo in your brass, there's no possible way you will hear any of this harp and celesta stuff, right? And you want these elements to, you want these beautiful, delicate elements to stand out. The pizzicato and this tremolo in the first violins and all of that stuff is just completely thrown out the window when you have these strong brass in here, right? So if you want the brass in here, you can have them, but they have to be soft, really, really soft, okay? So that's the main problem in here. Like as to the actual scoring itself, it's actually really neat. I love the way that the oboes sort of interlock with the flutes. That scoring is all right. It's okay that the second voice flute in here is fine in between the oboes because it's not too low, right? Getting any lower below C sharp, then you'd have a problem. But I like this. The way the English horn and the A clarinet work together, that's all great, and it's just providing these octaves with the flute, and it could use a little bit more support from your strings rather than just this tremolo on the lower voice, right? But whatever. You want things to be delicate and you want them to be heard. Right, but there's just no way you're going to get that if some elements are like what piano to what mezzo forte. Then mezzo forte has to be here if you're throwing in the clarinet suddenly, and you can hear things were really out of balance in the mock-up. Right. Okay, so now we're going on pizzicato at what dynamic? Right, which is the beginning of a new section, isn't it? Right, so piano. Right, so piano here, piano there, piano. Right, and then dum bum, right? You're having this voice right here taking over by two flutes, mezzo forte, right? Because you're trying to get some kind of way of them competing, but there is just really no way for this to have any kind of an effect with the dynamics here with piano horns just sort of sitting over the same area, all right? They're just really going to mess up the ability of the flutes to be heard here, right? And forget about this, the celesta. This is an incredibly soft note here, right? So this is where I'd say you really need like some really soft accompaniment here rather than stopped horns. You would need like maybe strings would work better right in here, right? And then you can go ahead and use this and use that. And now you have the flutes taking over, dum, bum, bum, bum. And then you have the bum being played by octaves and trumpets and horns, right? So the winds are going to completely disappear here, and you won't be able to hear any more winds as soon as these brass start playing at mezzo forte, because you've got no crescendo to mezzo forte or anything else in your... Right, you'd have to go crescendo to forte. This would have to be forte, and then this would be mezzo forte inside it, right? That is the only way this will balance. Also, the strings here would have to be mezzo forte, right? Because I see you still want that energy, da 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 da, bum 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 bum, right? You want the force to continue. That's why you didn't put the diminuendo here in the trumpets, right? But it's just not rational. It will blow away the flutes and the strings here. Okay. Now, bum, 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 bum. Here I would say you can just go mezzo staccato, just have a rest here instead of going mezzo staccato on a half note, right? So mezzo staccato on a quarter note, and then you can have a rest and then another at the end. And the player will get that it's just mezzo staccato all the way through. Okay, this note will tend to stand out as because it is not mezzo staccato, right? So if you want that, and it will completely destroy anything that is going on in the harp, right? Like there's almost no point in the harp playing anything at all. If you want a plucked sound that is going to balance with the trombone here, then it should come from the cellos, right? And it should be mezzo forte. And then here you need to go diminuendo, right? Because otherwise the strength of the potency of the brass here is going to wash over the downbeat of the next bar, right? You want to be able to start with this beautiful right? So this has got to go, I would say diminuendo here, even diminuendo in the pizzicato lower strings, so that it balances with everything, right? And then you have this answer, right? This is nice. And once again, right, this should be sorry. My fingers are fumbling a little bit today. Right? It should look like this, right? And that it will be completely clear that this is supposed to be mezzo staccato. It doesn't matter that there's a rest under a slur. Okay, and this is really strange. You're giving the first player the lower part, and you're having this. I mean, it's like, I see what you want to do here. You want the first player to be playing bum 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 bum, and you want the second player to be playing that middle along with the first flute, right? So I mean, that'll kind of work. Yeah, so staccato you don't need staccato on these notes, right? I think that might have been a mistake. And I would say also right in here, diminuendo at the end, just to pull out of the phrase, right? Now, this is kind of strange. You have open horns, piano, and then mezzo forte with your strings. I would say at least mezzo piano, and then diminuendo, right? Da da dum bum. I see what you want here, though. I mean, I don't misunderstand you. I understand, yeah, you, but I think it's just a little, yeah. I mean, I almost feel like this should be clarinets and bassoons rather than, like, if this is really the effect that you want, to make it a little fuller. I think it would be better to have mezzo piano or mezzo forte bassoons and clarinets right in here doubling, and then everything just kind of getting softer together into this final resolution. Okay, so but the scoring here is fine in the strings. You don't actually need this F sharp here, the top of the line here. It's already being taken care of by the violins here, and actually this can all be played non-divisi, right? It's like these are all sixths, right? Even this right here, this augmented fifth, is, it feels like a sixth, and it'll be playable as, enharmonically as a sixth in the fingering position on the second violin here. So it's all possible, right? So I would say non-divisi, and just get rid of the top voice here, and you don't need that divisi either. And now you have the whole string section playing with a nice full sound, right? So bum 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 bum. What's the dynamic here? Soft, right? This is soft piano. So these should all be marked piano, right? And if you want this to come through here, this should be mezzo forte and rolled, right? Have a roll mark going all the way through. Okay. So I really liked your score a lot, Paco. And I think you've entered these orchestration challenges before, and I definitely see some improvement here. And just really, I feel like you're learning so much about orchestration and just getting better and better. And I really appreciate that you are bringing your development, your improvements, your progress as an orchestrator here to the orchestration challenges, so we can take a look at them and think about all the really great ideas that you're coming up with. I really broke this apart in here, but that didn't mean that I thought it was bad. That didn't mean that I thought it was bad orchestration. I thought that it had some really great ideas, right? So it's just really balancing things more, and understanding a little bit more about certain elements and so on, and just really watching out about balancing horns in very delicate parts. Okay, so this was really another great group. I have not been disappointed yet. Everybody tried so hard and submitted such great entries to this, and I just really feel happy about it. So thank you so very, very much, everybody. Everybody watching, everybody who submitted a score, everybody who is subscribing to the Orchestration Online website newsletter, there's going to be another one on my birthday in a few days on Thursday. So I will see you, everybody, tomorrow with a couple more of these evaluations of the website entries, which will wrap all of those up, and then a couple more days of evaluations of the Patreon entries, and we will be done. And that will be worth celebrating along with my birthday. So thanks, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow.